All right, we're going to get started. All right. So, hi everyone. I am Kyra Kronberg. I'm the Communications and Operations Manager of Montana GEAR UP. And today I'm going to talk to you about a project we've been working on over the last year, about just in finding ways of highlighting student success through stories. This time last year, I was a month-long into a year-long service with the Montana College Access Team, specifically Montana GEAR UP and Educational Talent Search. And during my service, I was able to collect and distribute student stories in a magazine we call Bright Futures. So today I wanted to talk to you all about the Bright Futures project, including the path leading to it, the process development, and how we plan to improve the project in the future. So prior to being in Montana, I was a student at St Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin. So, and there I was a student intern with the communications office, and I got to lead a project called Humans of St Norbert. And so Humans of St Norbert is essentially a storytelling initiative we did on our social media. I don't know if you've ever seen Humans of New York, but it is very similar in that I would go out and interview student, faculty, staff, and occasionally alumni, and we would eventually post a quote from that interview along with a photo taken at the scene on our social media to go out to our target audience of prospective students and parents to just kind of give it a little insight into the college. And during these conversations, you kind of hear stories that you wouldn't typically hear on a typical basis. So I wanted to share a couple of them today. So the first one is Austin Marks. He is a student who donated a kidney to his childhood best friend, Trent. So Trent had 4 sisters, and none of them were a match to be able to give him a kidney. So he was on dialysis for, I believe, a couple months, and then Austin decided to get tested to see if he was a match, and somehow he was. And so then going on to the next one. So this is Hollenbeck. She was really fun to talk to. I went to go visit her. She is a biology teacher at Notre Dame High School in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I went there with 2 other students to go chat with her. We chatted for like 2 hours. And we just talked about her time at St Norbert. So she was part of the first class to involve women at St Norbert, which is pretty awesome. And she was actually a biology major in a time when women weren't really STEM majors. So she was telling us how there wasn't even a bathroom in the science building for women, and all that kind of stuff. So, but now she is still teaching high school in her, I believe she's in her mid-80s, but she actually had a professor in college that really inspired her to go into teaching, and so she loves it. She's still going at it, still going strong. So, and then we have Ruthie. So I met many incredible people through this project, but a conversation that really impacted my want to pursue higher education, or my work in higher education, is Ruthie Tucker. So she talked about her experience as a first-generation college student and only Native American on campus. And this is kind of big relating to Montana GEAR UP programs because 70% of the students we serve are Native American. So she's the one who kind of brought this perspective to me. We talked about her drive to create an initiative to physically bus students to campus from the reservations to show them college and give them tours. And this would not only show students the college life, but it would show colleges how they can support students culturally in their needs to success. And I think that was kind of a huge thing that I came to understand. So Ruthie is where I learned the term first generation student. And from there I started talking to more first gen students about their experiences and hardships in figuring out college life. So for Ruthie, college was never expected of her. If it wasn't for a counselor mentioning it in passing, she wouldn't have known when to apply for college. And then in following years, she didn't even know she had to apply for the FAFSA every year. So from that interview on, I saw that coined phrase of first generation student in a very different light. So after graduation in spring of 2020, I decided to go to Montana for an Americorps VISTA service term. So if you're unfamiliar, Americorps VISTAs are kind of like year-long jobs with a nonprofit or organization. And so I was placed at OCHE Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education, with Montana Educational Talent Search and Montana GEAR UP, as I mentioned. But they wanted to find ways to celebrate the student voice. So both programs exist to help students that are in similar positions as Ruthie, low income, first generation, in a lot of cases facing some sort of cultural barrier. But these programs had all these students defying odds and crushing these barriers, but felt that these stories needed to be shared. We've seen the numbers. We've seen the data. We all know that these programs work, but we wanted to put a face to that data and share stories that can go more into depth and show more of like a qualitative versus a quantitative. So the College Access team was looking for an initiative like Humans of St Norbert. However, we decided that a magazine would be the medium we'd pursue, so we created Bright Futures. And so I am going to go into a little bit about the process, including the release forms, nominations, interviews, and layout. But yeah, collecting these narratives over the past year proved to be a little harder than intended. So I don't know if you guys know, but we've recently gone through a pandemic. So this project became sort of a challenge. This was initially a project we had planned to do pre-pandemic, and then things changed. So starting at the release forms, this is something that we wanted to come up with to essentially explain the program to students and parents if the students were under the age of 18, and then get permission to use for photos, basically to lay out all the information so that they knew what they were getting themselves into, essentially. So yeah, photo use, parent permission, and it was just a general courtesy. And I also made sure that during the interviews themselves, I explained the project to the students, made sure they understood what essentially they were talking to me about, and yeah, where their face would be showing up. But we also worked with our legal team to kind of get these all set and get the wording just right. And one of my favorite things about these is we actually put a paragraph at the end that said that they would receive, each student that participated would receive two extra copies of the magazine. So it kind of held us accountable as well. So from there, we needed the liaisons. So liaisons in other states, they could be, I believe, like coordinators, site coordinators, or just essentially we call them the liaisons here, with the ones that are within the schools. And so we had them nominate each of the seniors, and this is where things got a little difficult. So So I basically had them nominate students informally. So I would reach out to them through email, and they would just respond back to me with a name or an email, or sometimes they would just connect me with the student directly through like CCing them on the email. But the only criteria that we had was that they were involved in GEAR UP or METS. For GEAR UP, that they're going to continue on to college, and that they are someone with a passion or a story to tell. And what I learned from the Humans of St Norbert project is that everyone had a story. So it was essentially up to the liaison to choose 1 to 2 students within their school. So it was a hectic time, and when you have someone you've never met reaching out through email asking for student nominations for a project that doesn't exist yet, my email wasn't exactly a priority. So, and it was especially hard because some schools were in person, some schools weren't going on at all, some schools had like a hybrid situation. So some of the liaisons didn't even have contact with their own students, let alone connecting someone that they never met before with the students. I was eventually able to get a couple of nominations, and I put together a little mock-up that showed a general layout of how these students would be featured, and showed it to liaisons at our meeting. And after that, some more nominations came in. Some gave me names and emails to reach out to, some tried to connect me directly. Some bribing with snacks was involved. So this is Sherry. She was one of our liaisons last year from Box Elder, and she was bribing them with snacks to be involved in the project. I never heard from them, but I hope they got their snacks. But in interview process, we were expecting to take a few weeks. It actually took a few months. So now I want to go into a couple of the specific student stories. So in the end, I was able to interview and feature 20 students through Zoom, all with very different stories. And I'll show a couple of snippets after I introduce each one. So this is Brianna. She is from Browning High School. She graduated last spring, and now she is a freshman at the University of Montana. Brianna faced several roadblocks in her life, both culturally and mentally. And how did she cope? By keeping herself busy. So this girl was involved in music, involved with her school's food pantry. She was a cheerleader. She was also a mental health and body positivity advocate. But her real passion was really for music. So she is a tuba player. She was also named the #1 high school tuba player in Montana, which was pretty awesome. She also got to travel around to play music, but now she wants to take that passion for music and bring it back to the Browning community and be a music teacher. So I'm just gonna show you a little video of her Zoom interview. I just wanted to give a little trigger warning. She does briefly mention a friend's passing by suicide and how it affected her. So just wanted to give a warning for that. I believe it'll play out.
I've been doing music since I was in 6th grade. Been in band for a really long time. It's definitely something I really enjoy. I can play like 10 different instruments. I've taken the time to learn every instrument that was available to me. It started out being kind of like a hobby. I wasn't really sure what it was for me. I just kind of did it for like fun. And then when I was going through a tough time in my life, I started focusing on music as like a kind of like a coping mechanism, just like something I look forward to. And after realizing like how much it meant to me and how much it helped me get through things, I thought it would be a great skill to like fully learn and then come back to the community and hopefully bring that back. I don't know if you know anything about like Perez or like backgrounding, but basketball's kind of the cool thing to do, but it's just like those of us that do it, we find more of like a enjoyment to do it. I always hear stories, I guess, of like how like the band used to be like the main core of like the basketball games and stuff, and like people used to be really into it, and I guess now it's kind of turned into like a thing where like basketball is everything and that's not cool. Like, but I hope that with me showing that it's more than just like playing an instrument or like, you know, doing something that people don't think really is like cool, that it can be other things too. Like I said, I did face a really tough time in my life. I mean, I guess, you know, being a bigger girl, I've always been, you know, kind of like the teenies and like, oh, you know, like this and this, kind of having my own struggles with, you know, being confident in myself and learning to love myself. I developed a lot of anxiety and being really nervous about things and really anxious. But also, my sophomore year of high school, my best friend passed away from suicide, and it was really tough for me because, you know, we found out there was bullying going on and just a lot of different things, you know, that played out, and we were just, you know, it caused a lot of like this like depression, you know, and like it was hard because like I said, you know, she passed away, and then it was like this big music festival thing was like right after, like a month after. So it was hard for me because I couldn't stop everything that I was doing. Because if you haven't noticed, I'm a very overachieving person. That does a lot of things. So I definitely like didn't take that mental health break that I think that mental health break that I think that well, I've been doing music since I was a big person. That does a lot of things. So, like, it was hard for me because I couldn't stop everything that I was doing. Because if you haven't noticed, I'm a very overachieving person. That does a lot of things. So I definitely, like, didn't take that mental health break that I think that I probably should have taken. But I just kept going and doing thing after thing after thing. Like, it was just like things to take my mind off of how upset I was. And yeah, after, I think that went on for a really long time until we hit quarantine for COVID. You know, I'd find myself just sad, you know, just realizing that I never really took the time to be sad and just you know, it caused a lot of feeling alone. Another big thing I'm really proud of is I'm a cheerleader at Browning, and I'm very passionate about, you know, kind of breaking the stereotype that you don't have to be mean to be a cheerleader, or you don't have to be skinny to be a cheerleader. That's definitely something I've always, you know, kind of been really proud of, is my community involvement. You know, a lot of what I do is for my community, and even though it's not just like one thing, because I do so many things, it's just the overall concept of being able to show that, you know, I'm Native American and I'm, you know, on a successful path.
Yeah, Brianna was awesome. She was super sweet, and we're both band nerds, so we got to geek out about that a little bit. So the next one I wanted to show is Victor Perez. So Victor was a Montana Educational Talent Search student who moved here to the U.S. from Mexico when he was 10 years old. So he moved to Polson, Montana. He graduated from Polson High School last spring. All these seniors graduated last spring. And now he's currently at the University of Montana. He's doing ROTC and wants to join the military. Last time I talked to him, he wanted to do Army. I believe that's what he ended up doing. But he is an aspiring police officer. Volunteered 200 plus hours at various wildlife organizations around Polson, and recently took up photography. So I wanted to show some of his photos, but there's his user handle if you ever want to follow him. But here's his story. Sorry, we're having some Wi-Fi issues. All right.
My name is Victor Perez. I was born and raised in Mexico. I was 10 years old, and then I moved up here. And I'm an outdoor fanatic. I love the outdoors, and I'm a hardworking individual who's always looking for opportunities. So I'm a senior this year in the mornings, and a freshman at SKC, taking dual enrollment classes at Community College. So my dad, he was here since he was 17. He lost his parents at a young age, so he had to survive on himself. So he came here, and he ended up with my step-grandparents, which we call it down here. And they met me since I was like 3 years old. So they would go down to Mexico to visit me. So I knew them pretty good, and they decided they wanted to bring my family because they really liked us. So now we live with them. Like I said, growing up in a small village in Mexico, and the transportation being a donkey, and my dad was always here working, so that made me really sad to fight for money to support my family, because I wanted to bring my dad back to Mexico with us. So I started many entrepreneur events, like I sold lemonades and coffee, walking around town in my village, trying to get money, which it might sound kind of dumb, childish, but I wanted to make that happen, which never did. So I bought a donkey, and I started giving people rides, like their grocery shopping, so to make money, which that didn't work. That entrepreneur failed. So, but my parents finally beat the court system, so we were able to come here. And that also major challenges, like I said, that's a whole new language and lifestyles that we have to adapt to. And the place we came to, it's not really much ethnicities. It's mainly Native American and Caucasian ethnicities. When I came here, I only got a week notice that I was coming. So I never got to say bye to my friends, like my classmates and all that. So that was pretty heartbreaking the first year. And I mean, we didn't have a phone down there. I got a phone for like a few years later when I came here. So like my friends out in Mexico didn't have phones either, so I couldn't communicate with no one. And then I started, since I legalized, I was able to come back and forth. So that made it really nice. So I can go see him. I spent a lot of headaches and hours trying to learn English. So I was put in a 5th grade class, and I just showed up that day, and I didn't know what I was doing. They hired a person who spoke a little Spanish, and then they hired a program called Rosetta Stone. I had to repeat myself over and over again until I finally passed. And that took at least all 5th grade. That was just lots and lots of headaches, and I needed to do it because I didn't see my parents were struggling with English. So, and my older brother, he was struggling pretty good too. So I decided I had to do it to help him out. My main goal is to be a federal officer, federal law enforcement officer. So I thought maybe getting military experience in college would give me experience and give me knowledge with a bachelor's degree. So I could put those in and be a better law enforcement officer. And it's definitely hard when you don't have anybody else who already went through it, so you can't really ask them how it is. But the college was a major help. I'm most proud of all the adversities I've overcome, like learning a new language. I'm pretty proud of it. And I mean, I'm still practicing. I still have to learn that a little more, but I'm gonna make my parents proud, and then I'm gonna break that barrier that stopped their family from growing. So I want to be not just the only one, but I want to be the first one of many more to come.
So yeah, that's Victor. He is very proud of the fact that he's a first-generation student. Not only that, but he came here in the 5th grade not even knowing English. So with that, he faced bullying, he faced many other trials with that. He eventually, once he got to high school, he became president of his class, and then continued just to get busier and busier throughout high school. And now, what was really cool is during our interview, he showed me his dream board. So he has the next 10 years of his life fully planned out in what he wants to achieve and what he wants to do. One of them was to become a U.S. citizen, which that happened about a month before this interview. So he was awesome to talk to. So the next one is Kiana. So Kiana was a Harlem High School student. She was a GEAR UP student. And she is currently studying at Gonzaga University. She was an independent student since the age of 16. She came from an abusive household, which made her living situation hard. Her uncle eventually gained guardianship of her, but after that, she still ended up becoming homeless twice within 1 year. And so she figured the best thing for herself was to move out with her older sister, who was 2 years older than her, and ended up living independently in an apartment with her. So through that, she still graduated 5th in her class with a 3.84 GPA, which is insane. She was also proud of the fact that she was part of an award-winning MAPS, which is a summer media program, documentary called Looking Forward from Yesterday. So I believe it won first place or a Blue Ribbon Award for, it was like a regional film festival of some sort. But highly suggest looking it up. I believe it's on YouTube. But yeah, here is Kiana. We'll let it buffer again. Oh, here we go.
I'm an independent student. I've been on my own for about 2 years. I had to overcome my mother's addiction. Moving onto the Fort Belknap reservation with my uncle and his ex-wife. He became my guardian, and then we were homeless for a bit. I was homeless 2 times within 1 year. And in January 2020, me and my sister decided to move in together. And thankfully, we don't have to pay any bills and whatnot. But just financially supporting myself has been a huge obstacle I've had to overcome and face. Living with my mom, when things would get really bad, I would just tell myself, people have it worse. There's always someone out there that will have it worse, who doesn't have the roof over their head or heat, you know, just like that kind of stuff. But like, at the same time, I did have it really bad. So just like telling myself, other situations are worse than yours, or like my situation is not forever. Like, I have to take control of my future and do what's best for me. And that's what I did. Me and my sister moved out of my uncle's care after we were homeless for the second time. And so it was hard, but it was the best thing we could have done for ourselves. So always looking out for my best interest. That's kind of what's been pushed me. But, you know, I still got through it. I could have done a lot of things differently, and I should have done a lot of things differently. But, you know, you live and you learn. So. I'm the 5th in my class. I have a GPA of 3.841. That's pretty proud. Yeah, I've kept straight A's all year since my sophomore year. I want to be an example for the other students here. A girl who came from a background of addiction and violence and domestic violence. Just, like, even though I don't tell them that, I want them to know on a way that I can relate to them and that I can use my trauma and my past experiences to become a stronger and better person and to put myself in an actual career that will support me and the rest of my family.
So now she is at Gonzaga University and studying, last time I talked to her, she wanted to study either business or psychology. So hopefully she went forward with one of those. So next I'll talk a little bit about the layout process. So we decided, so when we were kind of creating the magazine, we weren't intending on me staying around after my year of service, so I wanted to keep it simple. So simple layout, simple layout program, simple everything. So one thing is that in our office we use the Microsoft suite, so it made sense to use Publisher, which was part of that suite, so that whoever picked this project up in the office could easily adapt. So then we just decided on a simple 8.5 by 11, and then I purposely decided on more of like a simplistic layout, nothing fancy. But and then as far as a copy editing system, we just kind of printed out the pages and passed them around the office. Like, can you read this? Look for typos. And so we ended up having about 3 people look at each story to make sure that everything was good to go. So in the end, we created Bright Futures. So I'll actually hand a couple of these out if you just want to pass them around, just to kind of look at. But they have the different students' stories in them. They also have some other news stories just from the year. But this was the first edition, so what was nice is after we saw this one, we were able to look at, since I got to stay on with the team, I was able to look at it and be like, okay, I want to do this better next time, or I want to do this differently. So, but yeah, we eventually also made a website. So it's mus.edu/bright-futures. I'll see if I can somehow make it available after this. But we ended up putting a PDF version up onto the website. So we initially decided to make a website to make it just accessible to anyone who didn't receive a physical copy. Here, there are some others. I'll pass over to the side of the room. But it was for accessibility reasons. We also wanted it for ADA compliance as well. So anything that is in the PDF copy of it is on the website. If we have time at the end, I'll go through the website as well. But then, so I guess going forward, in the future, we are hoping to expand communication efforts with these student stories to potentially even some of our middle schoolers, some of our first year service students at some of the colleges in Montana. Just seeing some of their stories. And something I'm looking forward to is that when these students that are featured in Bright Futures end up going through and graduating from college, just to see where they started and where they ended up. It would be really awesome just to kind of see the transition there. We're also just going to do some other general Gear Up news stories. There's a lot of cool things happening in Montana Gear Up, and we want to be able to share them. So these are some mock covers we made for the next year. We decided that we're going to use a student from the previous year and use them for the cover. So we have both Brianna and Victor on some of these, but these are just concepts.
I've got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So, where do you distribute these? What do you give them out, or tell them the website or whatever?
So the question was, where do we distribute these? So we distributed them, since this was the first one, we just decided to send them to all of our stakeholders, all of our schools in the Gear Up our program got a copy. Their principal, their superintendent, and their liaison got a copy, and then each of the students featured got 2 copies.
So did the general Gear Up students receive this, the ones in the program?
We're hoping that they'll see it through the administration that received it, but that's something we're gonna work out in the future, that hopefully we can get some more printed, since this was just like a first copy.
Sure. And then my second question is, do you go out and do your photography, or do they provide it themselves?
They provided it themselves. This was also another complication with the pandemic. So initially I was gonna go with on the site visits to interview the students in person, but since we were in a pandemic, a lot of schools were closed. We ended up having the students provide the photos, which actually ended up being pretty effective, since they all had a photo to share. But yeah, okay. So I just want to emphasize that these stories help personify the data and these students. Everyone has a story, and their stories help us understand them, which in turn allows us to help support their needs. With many of these low income potential first generation students, society and especially college wasn't made for them to thrive. But I think it is possible to turn education into a place of growth and community for all students. I just think back to that conversation with Ruthie and how much easier her life would have been with a program like Gear Up or Montana Educational Talent Search to help remind her to do the FAFSA or tell her when to apply for college. And all those things that aren't a conversation in a first generation household. So going forward, I have officially joined the Montana Gear Up team full time as of a month ago. So I am excited that I get to continue this work and complete the next Bright Futures magazine and learn from the process and hopefully improve things. So now I want to pose a question to you, or just a question to think about in the future. How do you share your student voices? Is it through Humans of New York type series on social media? Is it through a publication like Bright Futures? Or is it something else? How can you put a face to the data? Just thinking about that. And at this time, I'd love to hear about maybe any of your initiatives. Otherwise, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yep.
Kyra, you did an awesome job. I do want to add one thing, though, from a program standpoint. You know, we analyzed the data on here ad nauseum. You know, we dig into the data, we look at the data, and a lot of times the data only tells a part of the story. And so when we're trying to inform our stakeholders on what's happening within Montana GEAR Up, and in Montana, we're actually under the Board of Regents. The Montana University System Board of Regents are kind of our governing body ultimately. And so they get the GEAR Up data from us all the time, but they don't really see how it affects students on a personal level. So sharing a publication like Bright Futures and being able to share this with and we also have plans to give it to state representatives, Board of Regents, those types of people to also show that there's a human side of the work that's done with GEAR Up is definitely a win. And so, Kyra, I don't think that enough can be said for the amount of work that she put into it and innovative and creative thinking, because, like she said earlier, she launched it in the pandemic. Nobody knew who she was, so when she was sending emails to people, they were just kind of like, "We're busy, thanks." And she, for lack of a better term, we always said she bird dogged them. So she just was tenacious, just went after them and got the stories. And the work that she did on this was fantastic for really not having a blueprint. We kind of just developed it as we went along. And so, yeah, great work.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, so if you want to contact me in the future about maybe questions about doing your own story initiative, or maybe something similar to the ones I've shown today, you can contact me on any of the Montana GEAR Up social media. So I run those pages, so even if you just DM the page, I'll respond. Otherwise, my email is kkronberg@montana.edu. That's my phone number. And yeah, feel free to reach out at any time. Yes?
So I know that you recorded the interviews and then wrote down the interview stuff in the magazine. Did you do anything else with the videos, like make clips to share, or is that just for your information?
So for this project in particular, this is all we did with the videos, but with Montana Educational Talent Search, we made a web page that I don't believe it's live yet, but I can send out information when it does. But we did a storytelling initiative called Leading the Way, and it is of Metz alumni telling their stories of how they got to college, got through college, because many of those students, I think most, like 80% of the program is first generation, low-income first generation. So, yeah, we talked to a bunch of those students. Brianna and Victor are both featured in that project in particular. As far as the future, that's something we're still trying to figure out. I would love to do some sort of video narrative project in the future, but right now, the rest of the video clips aren't being used.
Just a comment, my mom lives in Folsom, so I spend a lot of time there, and I was at a farmer's market this summer, and Victor was there at a booth at the farmer's market selling his photography, so it's great he's still out selling his photography. It was great to see that he was
And what's cool is he told me he got into photography because of his relationship with a teacher in his school, so it kind of shows how those relationships can lead to other things. But yeah, all 20 kids I talked to were incredible, and they're super fun and awesome, and especially when we were all dealing with Zoom fatigue, it was really nice of them to be able to come on and do one more interview or one more Zoom call. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Mine's got a comment. I think this could be very motivational with other GEAR Up students that are just starting to come up. and if they were to see what was going on and how this program helped these seniors who are now got their plan in place, I think that would be just incredible for that peer-to-peer relationship.
And I think part of my new position is figuring out how we can use some of these as like an internal communication for some of these students. And hopefully we can get some copies into the hands of students in the future as well. And I think one thing I might have forgotten to mention is for the future, when we're making the magazine, I might play with the idea of doing direct quotes versus me writing 200-word stories, because you can only tell so much in 200 words, and especially when it was me telling their story versus them, I think it took away something from it. So I'm gonna play with the idea of putting it in direct quotes, kind of like what we did with Humans of St Norbert. But I think doing that will also kind of give more of that impact to the student voice. So, any other questions? How much time do we have?
Yeah, 20 minutes.
Oh, 20 minutes, okay. I'll actually go through and show you guys the website, actually. So yeah, again, this is mus.edu/bright-futures. And this is just kind of hosted on the Montana University System website. But if you go on to here, everything that's on the website is the content that's within the magazine here. So you can even download the PDF. But we always have our college access events. So National Gear Up Week, Montana College Application Week, all those. But then we also decided to do a letter from the directors, just to kind of acknowledge the year, acknowledge the work that the students put in. There's Travis. But then you have the senior stories. So all 20 of them are on there, and what's nice is you can go on here and click and they go right to the student as well. And then something I didn't quite talk about, we have this like little news area. We're hoping to kind of expand this effort a little bit. This was just kind of like an idea to take up a little bit of space. But we kind of share news about our Youth Leadership Academy students and just other things going on in Gear Up world. And then it was the same with Montana Educational Talent Search. And then we had a couple of liaisons and college advisors for Mets retiring, so we decided to do a little feature on them as well. So it was just a little bit beyond the senior stories, but yeah. I will put my contact information up one more time. But yeah, if there's no other questions, feel free to talk to me at any point. Otherwise, you can have the rest of the time back. Yeah.
What time of year did you publish it? Was it like over the summer?
We published it in the spring. So ideally, we want to publish it before the students get out of school. So like early May. We're aiming for late April. Yeah.
You may have mentioned this, but is your presentation being shared?
Yes. So actually, if all the presenters in this conference, if they gave consent, their presentation will be recorded, and we'll be posting it to the Montana Gear Up YouTube page. So we'll see if there's a way to share that out at the end of the conference. But otherwise, I'll be sharing it on our social media. So if you want to follow, then we'll have it there. But yeah, this one especially is going to be recorded and posted later, so you can watch it then.